possible, ease the humanitarian crisis, and promote a comprehensive, fair, and lasting solution to the Palestinian issue at an early date.
The war must end immediately. We must immediately move to a ceasefire. Aid and food supplies must immediately be allowed to enter. We must avoid more death and harm to civilians. We saw huge numbers of casualties so far. We are still facing serious developments and serious humanitarian crisis, or a humanitarian disaster rather, that requires effective international action to address it and confront it, including the ongoing violations by Israeli forces and their continued violation of international law and international humanitarian law.
Well, Carice Witte is the founder and executive director of the Signal Group. Thank you very much for being with us, Carice. So we heard from the Chinese foreign minister there. Beijing kind of positioning itself as the champion of the Arabic and Islamic world. It's quite unusual, isn't it? Because publicly, at least, China prefers to stay out of other countries' affairs.
Well, this is a new position that China is trying to move into. We saw it, as noted just a moment ago, in the Saudi-Iran rapprochement that was brokered, at least at the final section of it, by China. And China then came to the Israeli and Palestinian foreign ministers and said, we would like to help solve that conflict by taking it to the United Nations, indicating that they are not understanding of Israel's position whatsoever, all things considered, with how the United Nations receives Israel. Right now, for the foreign ministers to make their first stop in China, this could have something to do with the fact that China is now holding the presidency, the rotating presidency of the United Nations Security Council. But at the same time, it's probably the most welcoming place that the Arab foreign ministers will be received when you compare it to the United States and Europe, where you will not hear the same kind of comments about ceasefire that you hear out of Wang Yi. It's not reasonable, and for the simple fact that Hamas has said in so many words, as we all know, that the moment they can, they will continue to repeat October 7th over and over until they've completed the job. And the Chinese are well aware of this. Nonetheless, they look like grand statesmen, and it seems impressive. But when you are in China, as I was 2 weeks ago, you hear a very different story.
Oh, okay. What is the different story that you're hearing?
That China realizes that it does not have the leverage or the capability of having a direct or real impact on either of the parties. Even its influence with Iran, where it is almost a monopoly buyer of the energy there, is limited. Very likely that China has already spoken to Iran in order to prevent escalation of this war, because if it should grow and I don't want to say get out of hand, but expand in a serious way, then the price of oil goes up. And at a certain point, when it hits a certain level, price point, it becomes an existential crisis for China. So certainly they've been encouraging Iran to rein things in. But as we know, there's a lot of action happening in the northern border of Israel with Lebanon, with both American and Israeli troops. So we can see that China doesn't even have the leverage with Iran, much less Hamas or, for the most part, Israel.
And we know, don't we, Carice, that China does have some well-documented economic problems at the moment. Any rise in the oil price could, as you point out, have a detrimental effect on Beijing.
Well, the economy is extremely weak, and it has been for months without light at the end of the tunnel. It has taken on some more debt in the provincial regions in order to try to move the economy. It's not expected to have a huge impact. When I was there, I was surprised by how few foreigners there are, and I flew from Beijing to Tokyo, and the plane was less than half empty. There's very little interest globally of increasing foreign direct investment into China. And exports are down because the global economy is slowing. So China is having a difficult time, which reduces, when it doesn't have economic power, that reduces its leverage in general.
So would you say, Carice, more broadly, that this is more about Beijing being confrontational with regard to Washington? And how does that fit in with President Xi's visit with President Biden a few days ago?
Yeah, definitely the visit was aimed, it was very important to President Xi because of the economy, because I think that the Chinese people have also made it clear that they want better relations with America. Many said that they have benefited. When I was there, they said to me very directly, they benefited from good relations with the United States. So I think the purpose of that was to cool down the tensions between the two. And I think to some degree, it did help. But that doesn't mean that China has done an about face. Certainly, if the United States is on one side of this conflict, China's going to want to be on the other side. And as you can see by the Arab leaders, this gives China the sense that the so-called global South, developing countries around the world, will be on China's side, vote with China in international institutions such as the United Nations, which is where China wants to see a great deal of international activity take place because it is playing the numbers.
All right, fascinating. Thank you very much, Carice Witte there. She's from the Signal Group. Thanks a lot.